This hand, we pick up pocket queens in +2. Bart in +1 opens it up to $300. We've got a strong hand finally to 3-bet for value, so I decided to go for it. 3-bet to 1100. Bones on the button surprisingly comes along and makes the call. Bart called as well, and we're going 3 ways to a bloated pot against 2 of the Texas's best pros out there.
In this episode of Weekly Poker Hand, we are playing 25, 50, 100 Texas No Limit Hold'em, facing raise. Rampage Poker 3-bets it up with pocket queens, which is perfectly fine and standard. Then Bones cold calls on the button, playing about $23,000 deep, 230 big blinds. Typically when people cold call 3-bets, assuming they play anywhere near competently, they're going to have very good, strong suited high cards, like ace-queen suited, maybe king-queen suited, maybe ace-jack suited, maybe ace-king suited, maybe. Then also middle pairs, queens, jacks, 10s, 9s, something like that. Maybe splashy players will be in there with more suited aces, more suited connectors, and every once in a while someone will get really tricky and slow play aces or kings. I do not expect Bones to be in this pot with 9-6 suited or jack 4 offsuit for fun. The initial raiser calls as well. See a 3-way flop.
The flop comes queen jack 3, 2 diamonds, top set, baby. This is what we've been waiting for all night long. Bart checks to me, and I put in a bet of $1,100. And for this small sizing, $1,100, both players make the call.
Bluff is the dream flop for Rampage Poker. Maybe you'll finally get unstuck. It comes queen of diamonds, jack of diamonds, 3 of hearts. They checked him. He bets small, 1,100 into 3,475. Now, typically in multi-way pots, when you do bet, you do want to bet small. And I have to presume against a cold caller, this is probably not a flop you want to bet every single time, right? So for that reason, I think Rampage can get away with betting pretty polarized with just his best hand, some high equity draws, and a few junky draws, using a medium size, maybe 1,600 or 1,700, because the board is so incredibly dynamic with lots and lots of draws. Because, look, Rampage wants to get money in the pot with his hand that's almost always good, but is somewhat vulnerable to being outdrawn. Whatever, though. He goes 1,100, and both people call. Now, when Bones calls, Bones is going to have something pretty good, right? At this point, flush draw, straight draw, top pair maybe a set of jacks in the ideal world. And when the other player calls, I would start to remove really good hands from their range. Like I would expect them to have 2 pair or better, but they could still be sitting here with a hand like ace-queen or king-10 suited or any sort of flush draw. Let's go to the turn.
With the big pot building, the turn comes another queen. Oh my God. Quads with the pot over $6,500 and with more money to play with. Bart checks to me, and I am just so excited. Not sure what we get value from, as we have the entire board locked up, obviously. I decide to chuck this one over to Bones.
The turn is really the dream for Rampage. Now he's going to have the nuts on almost all rivers. His opponent checks. He decides to check to give Bones a chance to value bet thinly and or bluff. And this is a spot where if I'm playing in live poker, I'm doing everything I can to try to figure out if the player yet to act will bet if I check. Now, obviously, if your opponent's a good, strong player, you'll have no idea. But you'll see some players lining up chips, getting ready to put them in the pot before the action's even on you. And that's the case, you definitely want to check because they're going to put money in the pot either way, right? That said, I think because the board is so incredibly draw heavy, I probably would have just bet in this spot in Rampage's shoes. At this point, the pot is how much? 6,700. And I think if you go something like 2,500, no one's going to fold out any sort of high equity draw like a flush draw or king 10. And I think the players yet to act, well, the one player yet to act will check it back with a lot of those hands. And I think we'd rather just build the pot against them, even though they're obviously drawing dead. Quite often, when you do have your opponents both drawing to 0 outs, you don't mind checking because you really want them in the pot. But at the same time, I'm not sure you can necessarily count on the player yet to act to bet. Let's see what happens.
And onto him, he doesn't let me down. He throws out a bet of $3,000. Bart folds, and thank you, Bones, for putting money in the middle. I am just going to make the call. With quads, we're off to see a river, hoping to maybe complete a straight or some sort.
Bones obliges and puts some money in the pot, $3,000, which is amazing for Rampage because Rampage is going to win this pot. unless his opponent makes a straight or royal flush. A lot of players in this situation make the blunder of just raising at this point, thinking, all right, I have the best hand, let's put the money in. But no. You really, really, really want to keep your opponent in with whatever thin value bets they have, so maybe they can improve to some super duper nut hand. And also you want to keep them in with their draws so that hopefully they can improve to a straight or a flush. And if they don't improve to a straight or a flush, hopefully they have king high on the river and feel inclined to continue bluffing. So good check and call by Rampage. Do not raise here ever. Let's go to the river.
The river comes a 5 of clubs. It's a total brick. I'm going to check this one over to him as, honestly, like I said, we have the entire board locked up. And we want to keep letting his bluffs bet.
Let's practice some hand reading before we move forward in this hand. What bluffs do you think Bones would logically bluff with on this river when check to? Take a second. Think about it. Let me know in the comment section down below. And I want you to think about which bluffs should bluff basically every time, because they're good combinations to bluff with, and also consider which combinations of bluffs, don't necessarily want to bluff, even though they also cannot win at the showdown. Because if you bluff with every bluff here, you're bluffing far too often. Take a second, think about it. Let me know in the comment section down below. And while you're down there, click the like and subscribe button for me, please. This is a neat spot because Bones' range is very condensed due to the calling of the preflop 3-bet. I'm not sure what it even looks like, so that's something to consider right off the bat. For Bones to call the flop and then bet the turn, the bluffs that make some logical sense are going to be king high flush draws, but are there really any? Would he have king 9 suited or king 10 suited preflop? Maybe, maybe not. What about 10-9 suited? Would he call 10-9 suited preflop? Again, probably not. I think king 9 suited is the least likely of those 3. Probably king 10 is the most likely. 10-9 is the second most likely. He could have 9-8 suited. Diamonds I'm referring to, obviously. Front door flushes. Front door flush draws that would consider bluffing. Would he want to bluff the ace high flush draw on the turn? Probably not. Although maybe he does. Like say he's sitting here with ace 10 of diamonds. That'd be a reasonable hand to bet because it has lots of equity. Not in this spot, but in general. And if he did have a hand like ace 4 of diamonds, which again may not be in their preflop, that would be an okay one to bluff too. Does he have ace king offsuit? Would he decide to bet it on the turn? Maybe, maybe not. He does block aces, kings, and ace queen, which is certainly valuable. Maybe that is a logical bluff given his range is so tight. And look, if he's playing reasonably, I don't think there's a whole lot else he could actually have. So, in general, if you're playing in a regular pot that's not where you don't have an overly tight range due to cold calling a 3-bet preflop, you have to be really careful bluffing all your busted straight draws and all your busted flush draws, because if you bluff those, you're bluffing far too often. And when the flush misses, you typically do not want to bluff with your missed flush draws. Why is that? Well, that is because when you have a missed flush draw, it's less likely your opponent has a missed flush draw because you have 2 of those flush draw cards in your hand, which makes it proportionally more likely your opponent has something else, either a busted straight draw or a made hand. And you want to bluff a little bit less often into a range that contains a few more made hands in general. So in that spot, you'd much prefer to bluff with hands that do not have a diamond in them, in this case. That said, because this pot started with such a condensed range, I think Bones can probably get away with betting a lot of his potential bluffs, because I don't think he has all that many bluffs on the turn to begin with, which means when he gets to the river, he doesn't have that many either. His problem here, though, is that his value betting range is also going to be really tight. Probably queen jack, pocket jacks, ace queen, maybe king queen. Most of those are going to be suited. That's about it. It's not all that many combinations. And, knowing Rampage has the queens in his hand, it really, really reduces those. Very, very weird spot. That said, you still want to check and give him a chance to bluff with whatever nonsense he has. Let's see if he does it.
I check, and he bets out $9,000. I am fist pumping so hard right now. He has about 7, 8, 9,000 left in this stack. I'm so excited. Obviously, we can't contain our excitement too much. I just rip it all in, announce all in. He calls. We show queens for quads, and he shows pocket jacks. Unfortunately, big thank you to Bones, who decided to fold the entire flop, so we couldn't get a good shot. So we can give a huge shout out to him. We couldn't get a cool thumbnail, but absolute huge cooler quads versus a full house.
Cooler of the century. top set versus middle set, boat against quads. Rampage finally finds a way to win a pot. I'm happy for him. It's important to make sure you celebrate your wins, especially when they don't come around all that often. I'll talk to you next time.